So I want to talk a little bit about this film that that I saw. Well, I've seen it twice now. Once in theaters on my own, and once in theaters with a group of people. So this film is The Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And hopefully, if I have a little bit of time, I might talk about another subject that I think is interesting, but probably just leave it at this. And so I really I sat through this movie. First of all, this movie was really well done. It was probably one of the most interesting Marvel movies I've ever seen. I've always really enjoyed the dynamic of the Guardians of the Galaxy group. Uh, Zoe Saldana, Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Vince. Is it Vince Vaughn? No, Vince something, right? And Bradley Cooper, right, plays Rocket. And so in this in this film, it's just really interesting. I've had other videos and other times where I've talked about just Hollywood from a spiritual perspective and what's going on in the kind of Marvel universe or in the Disney universe or this or that. This movie it has a lot in it to kind of suggest that it has a spiritual theme behind it and a spiritual motivation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those things, but I might uncover some things that maybe you missed in it. I still, before like to preface this discussion, I still don't really know where I land as far as like what you should be watching as a Christian. I don't want to be the guy to tell you you should watch this, you shouldn't watch this. Obviously, things like pornography is a no-brainer. Like we shouldn't be watching that because it corrupts us. But I've in my previous videos talking about these stories, I've discussed the fact. Well, I think it's a fact, but it's kind of my theory that that these stories provide good mediums for us to learn information. They're a way that we get maybe ideology or propaganda, maybe something spiritual. There's a spiritual agenda behind the film, and I think that was kind of present in the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Definitely present in the Avengers movies with Ultron. He's a AI that is given life, and then he has an army, and he is going to try to destroy the world, and then so that only his army can live, and so he does that with sending a meteor, and there's a comet that reminds us of Revelation or Sodom and Gomorrah or something like that, and just judgment. And so, thing I want to point out before I get into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 specifically is that the first two Guardians of the Galaxy had somewhat of a inverted biblical theme. So the first one, the enemy. First of all, you look at the enemy. Who are they fighting? What are his attributes? And the first enemy, his name is Ronan, and he's this priest-like guy. He looks like kind of a priest. I mean, he has a headdress that's like a priest, and he has a staff, and he's always talking about how he wants to cleanse the world, um, and he has other priests that work for him that are so his name is Ronan. I don't know what the meaning behind that name might be, but he is definitely a quasi-religious kind of zealot guy. But he's not God. The only thing that makes him kind of God-like is that he gets this Infinity Stone, and he has this power that he can destroy planets, and that's what the Guardians of the Galaxy are trying to prevent him from doing. And then at the end, they prevent him, and when he goes to this planet that he hates, and he wants to destroy all the people on the planet. Thanos is kind of the same type of deal, and obviously you have the Guardians of the Galaxy fighting Thanos in the Avengers. You have the Guardians of the Galaxy fighting in the second volume this man named Ego, who actually is Peter Quill's father. And Ego is some sort of like divine super being. He has the ability to create worlds through this power that is called the light. And the light is how he's trying to reproduce the light in his son Peter Quill so that Peter Quill can recultivate this power, but Peter Quill rejects the power of the light and wants to remain with his friends and to destroy his father ego. So he gives up what his power may have been. And so in volume three, I'll just get into volume three then. Uh, just with that in the background, you have a few things that stand out right away. The beginning of the film, where they are, the setting, the location. By the way, there's going to be spoilers in this movie or in this film, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you might not want to watch this unless you're not worried about things being spoiled. Personally, I think the Marvel movies, they're just so much content. It doesn't really matter if things are spoiled or not, but that's just my opinion. They're in a skull of a dead demigod and that's the location of this place called, I think it's Nowhere, and that's where the Guardians of the Galaxy are inhabiting in the beginning. So they're the beginning of the film, they're in a skull floating around in space. So it makes me think of the mind of sinful man as death, but I don't know if that makes you think of anything. So maybe I'm reading too much into this. But I think that there's nothing, that's one thing that you learn in film is that there's nothing put on the screen by accident. Um, and so what happens is you can't make this stuff up, but they're in this skull, and then the raccoon, Rocket, is abducted, or this man comes and he tries to abduct Rocket, and this man's name is Adam. He's like this very strong being, and he's a member of the race called the Sovereign. So you have Adam and the Sovereign, right? That he's the first creation of this sovereign race, and he comes into the skull to try to rescue or abduct Rocket the raccoon, right? And what you end up learning in the video is, or in the movie as it progresses, is that Adam and the Sovereign race was created by another uh, evil villain named the High Evolutionary. So he's got this power that is he creates races. What he does is he goes around and he tries to construct the perfect being through some sort of transhumanist method, and he creates these animals. And Rocket was one of his experiments, and he gave Rocket this amazing brain. That's why he's trying to get Rocket back so he can get his brain, right? And that he can create a super race. And so what he does later in the film is he creates a quasi Earth, and this, it looks like Earth, but it's his own creation with all these weird looking, demonic looking beings, I think. And there's just like in this film too, there's just so much imagery that just is very strange looking and bizarre. Uh, and so one just kind of a detour, but one moment in the film they have to go and get this information from this uh, outpost in space. And this outpost looks like, to me when I first saw it, I was like, that looks like a disemboweled lower intestine. Like that's just what it looked like to me. And they have to, the people go out of the ship, and they're all dressed in rainbow colors. And so that, they have to get the rainbow, sneak the rainbow in there somewhere for your kids. Okay, your kids are going to be watching this. How are we going to get the rainbow in there? Well, the Guardians of the Galaxy, surprise, surprise, all wear the rainbow, fly out of the ship, and then fly into this lower intestine looking thing. I don't know what it is. And then they go in, and there's all these people dressed up like amoebas or maggots or something. I don't know. And they have to like sneak in and steal this information. And the whole movie is seriously entertaining. It's really it kind of keeps you hooked. But towards the end, I mean, it's like 2.5 hours long. So towards the end, I'm just like, okay, how much action can I take? But yeah, just a lot of action, a lot of kind of lowbrow humor, which I enjoy. The humor is kind of what keeps me going back to these movies and watching them. Um, but I just can't help but like see that there's these agendas that are being written into them. And so where was I before I went to the lower intestine out space outpost. Just really like strange things. So okay, yeah. So the High Evolutionary, he creates this counter world, and then of course his plan is that the people aren't perfect in this world, so he has to destroy the world and start over. And so there you have the jab at Christianity, the jab at God is that God is he created the world, but the world isn't perfect. So when God says that he judges the world through the flood or in Sodom and Gomorrah, the people who write these films or the spirits that are behind the films are making a criticism of God for deciding to judge. And you'll see that in all the Marvel movies, or not all of them, but some of them, that there's the criticism is God's mindset, God's judgment. Uh, and that's how they make God out to be the supervillain, and anybody who ends up to fight that supervillain, they're going up against a power that is way more powerful than them, but then they become the hero, and so they, I don't even know like all the intent behind this film, or if any of this is intended, or if it's just coincidence, but I don't see things as coincidental. And so there's plenty more in this film. I mean, at one point, this Adam guy goes and he touches Chris Pratt's finger, and they're like mocking the Michelangelo painting of the creation of Adam, and it's just like okay, well that looked like, and it's just a split second that they do this, and if you know what it is, you're looking for it, you see it, and you're like, okay, that kind of is making fun of me, but then is it really, or making fun of my faith, but is it really? So it's kind of hard to tell, like if they're blatantly making fun of the faith, if that's what they're trying to do, or if they're actually presenting a criticism of God Himself, if that's what they're doing, or if they're just tired of this Christian colonialism, patriarchy, whatever, if that's what they're doing, or trying to promote like some sort of woke stuff. I don't know what they're doing. That's the thing. It's like it's so confusing to me. Um, and then the other thing that's tough for me is just like how much content there is, how many times Marvel's reproducing these things. And I know what I'm gonna get into when I go see a Marvel movie. I'm like, well, it's gonna make me laugh. I'm gonna be entertained. There's gonna be a lot of action. There's gonna be a pretty cool storyline, and there's probably gonna be some sort of inverted gospel theme in it as well. So all those things are present in the film. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is Psalm 82 in relation to this. So Psalm 82, in the beginning of Psalm, that's where Psalm 82 is where it says God presides in the great assembly. He gives judgment among the gods. And then it says in Psalm 82 that God is, when He's giving these judgment among the other gods, which are the other principalities who rule nations, that He says, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Now we know that these principalities have been around for generations. They've seen civilizations rise and fall, mythologies be formed, religions be formed. They saw the death of Christ. They witnessed it. They've seen these things, and so as they go through it, we understand that they know a lot more than us. They know how to tempt people. They know how to tempt civilizations and make them fall and fall into the same patterns that they're in. So they know, in some ways, a lot more than we do. But what gives us hope is in Psalm 82 later, it says that according to God, they know nothing, they understand nothing, and they walk about in darkness. So even these principalities who probably know math and science way better than me, and who know how to tempt me better than I know the way that I'm tempted, according to Psalm 82, he says they know nothing, they understand nothing. So these are spiritual forces, and the war is against flesh and blood, according to Paul. And to correspond with that, if we look in 2 Corinthians, or in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, uh, it says that the Spirit, nobody knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. And no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind conceived what God has prepared for those who love Him. So for God's people, he has prepared a place for us to live in eternity through Christ. And there's no way of perceiving what God has, but what it says in that section of scripture is that God reveals those things to us through his spirit. For who knows the thoughts of a man except the spirit of man? But we have the spirit of Christ, right? So we have God's Holy Spirit living in us, and the Spirit of God knows the thoughts of God, and so God reveals his desires, his thoughts to his people. And so already you have an edge up. It might seem that you're overwhelmed by the evil age, but Paul says, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good through love, because love covers over a multitude of sins. And so because of what Jesus did for us, he brought us in to his thoughts and his mindset. And later in that section in 1 Corinthians, it says that the spiritual man makes judgments about all things, but he himself is not subject to any man's judgment. So what I was talking about with these films is probably highly controversial, and people might roll their eyes at me. But the truth is that I put a lot of time and thought into spiritual things, and looking at some of the stories, which are really just modern day mythologies that we are taught. And you can probably get some good things out of those films too. I'm not saying there's nothing redeemable about them, but the idea that there's no more modern mythologies and that the principalities aren't still at work in the world trying to kind of groom the next generation to have a predisposition, feeling a certain way, either for or against God, and that they're not doing the same things they were doing in Greece or in Rome. I think it's kind of naive for us to consider that, especially when we look at Psalm chapter 82, and then we realize the hope in that is that, yeah, we are temporary beings here in the world. I've only been alive for 33 years. That's all I've seen. That's all I know. But the spirit in me is the Spirit of God, who has helped me to understand things. Not everything, but that I am permitted, according to God, to make judgments about a movie, I think, and to share those judgments with you. And you can take what you want to take and leave what you want to leave. But um, there's more than just the mind of the writer behind these films, especially as so much of a spiritual war is going on in the world right now. That this spiritual war is going to be manifesting in film, and it's going to be trying to play with people's emotions and take them in a certain direction. And so I just wanted to make this video as food for thought, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like and share it with somebody who might also have been thinking about these questions. So thank you. God bless.